so prepare for wizardly combat.
I want to show you a trick Mother showed me when you weren't around.
And I'll not laugh or fast step out the
Welcome to Spellburn, a podcast covering the Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game and old-school adventuring. It's time to party like it's 1974.
Release the princess, so prepare for wizardly combat.
I want to show you a trick Mother showed me when you weren't around.
And I'll not laugh or fast step out the
Welcome to Spellburn, a podcast covering the Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game and old-school adventuring. It's time to party like it's 1974.
Release the princess, so prepare for wizardly combat.
I want to show you a trick Mother showed me when you weren't around.
And I'll not laugh or fast step out the
Welcome to Spellburn, a podcast covering the Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game and old-school adventuring. It's time to party like it's 1974.
It's hard to believe, but here we are in Spellburn's 150th episode. It's been 13 years of Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG and 12 years of Judges J. We wanted to mark the occasion by breaking things up a little bit with a very special guest tonight, the Dark Master, who started it all, sending his thralls far and wide over the land, bringing chaos and cultists to every friendly local gaming store in search of Kovacs covers and funky dice. And what a ride it has been. Emerald Enchanters, Savage Kings, Lankmar, Dying Earth, Purple Planet, Shutter Mountains, and even MCC RPG. Yes, we got the mutants in there. Not to mention the million or so multiversal variants out there like Umerica, Weird Frontiers, and many, many more. We're going to talk about how we got here in 2025, where we are today, and most importantly, we're going to scry the future of DCC RPG and Goodman Games with the help of the Dark Master. I am Judge Julian, and with me I have a semi-unusual cast of Judges J. They are Judge James.
Hola.
And Judge Joseph.
Aloha. I'm glad my name qualifies me to be amongst this esteemed company.
Yeah, you could just join up anytime.
I mean, really, you can
Good to know.
we'll cover the initiation later, but now you can make the demands of the judge's J whenever you feel. So tonight's episode is
Excellent.
going to be a little different due to time constraints and the various reversals of chronal polarities. We're going to skip the tavern talk. We're going to go straight to our mighty deeds. And at the end, we'll do a little bit of crowdfunding before we sign off. So onward. All right. Hey, Joseph Goodman, thank you for being here with us tonight. It's great to have you. In your honor, Judge Bob has even completed a brand new Dark Master bumper just for this episode.
No way.
Yes, it's freaking cool, and I've listened to it like 10 times already in the last few days. So so that's fun, and
Awesome.
everybody's heard it as I'm talking about it at this point. So on the podcast. So
Except for
uh,
me, of
except
course.
well, yes,
Thanks.
no, I mean when they're hearing it, they'll
I,
anyway.
I get it. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, thank you, Judge Bob, and welcome, Judge Joseph. We're very glad to have you. It's been 13 crazy years, and it's been longer than that for Goodman Games. So maybe we go all the way
Yeah.
back just for a little bit and talk about the beginning of Goodman Games, what you set out to do in that early era, 3.5 and later. What was the initial purpose of Goodman Games or mission, I should say?
Yeah, it is hard to believe this coming year will be our 25th anniversary, which is just insane to me. And we started doing, yeah, thanks. Started during the D20 boom, which is crazy to me to think that people who came in with 5e, like this is ancient history, 5e launched in 2014 and Gimmick Games was around for almost 15 years before that. So for a lot of people who have entered with 5e, it is, talking about third edition is like to us talking about like, lead miniature war games in the 1960s. It's amazing that frame of reference as to how far back it is. But in those olden days before 5e, yeah, we started publishing D&D third edition adventures and source books and so on, and did it through fourth edition as well. And DCC was kind of a reaction to fourth edition in some ways, filling a void, a both spiritual void and gameplay void and business void left by fourth edition. So that first 10, 15 years of history is all in the pre-DCC era is important in some ways for setting the stage. But to your point, it's been like the 13 years since that have been, I don't know, some of the most exciting times for Gimmick Games history.
I mean, DCC obviously is where I jumped on to. I mean, I had a few Goodman Games adventures that I enjoyed in the 3.5 era and stuff. In fact, as I've told the story about 10 times on this podcast, I even talked about one of them to the author Brendan LaSalle on my first cab ride into my first Gen Con, which is funny. But
That's
um,
awesome.
but of course, DCC RPG is where I first jumped onto the train, and of course, like you say, it really came on. But yeah, we were already, at this point, you were already doing old school adventures at that time for the existing D&D versions, right?
Yeah, we started doing a wide variety of things, but within, I want to say the first year and a half or so, we published DCC number one, Idols of the Rat King, by Jeffrey Quinn, who's a great writer. And it was deliberately designed to evoke those feelings of nostalgia among people who remembered the 1980s, TSR design. Nowadays, we have this word, right? OSR, old school Renaissance. And I think people know what that is. Gimmick Games was doing that about 15 years before that word existed. I believe that I was the second person to ever do it. Kinzer and Company did a version of that. Let's call it, I don't know, that throwback look a year or two before I did. But entering into that era of third edition way back in, I think it was 2002, I believe, was the first DCC adventure that was published. And for me, it was partly about the style of play that I liked. I just liked old school. We didn't even call them old school dungeon crawls, right? Back then, it was just, I don't know, dungeon crawling. And then we published, I think it was 40 or 50 in the first maybe 4 or 5 years because it was really popular and people kept buying it. We kept reprinting it. We updated the cover art. We kind of wandered around the halls for a while until we figured out, like the first printing of DCC number one had a digital cover. And then it was also because I was relatively inexperienced and hadn't made contact yet with the artist that reflect the style I want. In the next couple printings, we zeroed in on exactly the style of cover we wanted to do, and it eventually became hand painted art. Found our path, so to speak. But a lot of it was visual indicators. We did blue maps on the inside of the covers. Do you guys remember why TSR did blue maps back in
Yeah.
the day?
You
You remember
couldn't
the mimeograph
photocopy them?
machines?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Keep all those young punks from photocopying their their D&D
Damn
modules.
pirates.
Um, yes, it's like the same conversation we now have about
Yeah.
piracy, but a totally
Yeah.
different form, you know?
Yep.
But for a certain audience, the blue maps, I remember going to cons and people would be like on the fence about whether they want to buy it. Then I would open the cover and show them the blue maps inside the cover, and that would like seal the deal, you know?
Yeah.
And to some degree, it's like these visual indicators that like are emotionally charged. You know, you have so many associations with the cover design and the blue maps and the black and white art. And so it's partly the actual adventuring itself, because the adventures are great, but partly just those whatever those feelings are that you associate it. You know, we have so many like warm, cozy feelings associated with like turkey and gravy and like cranberries and pumpkin pie and like D&D adventures where you fight stuff in a mine, you know,
Yeah.
for some of us at least.
Right. I mean, it was like all of our childhoods, right? We'd be hanging out with our buddies
Yeah.
in the basement, playing for inordinately long periods of time, drinking terrible soda pop and having terrible snacks. And yeah, there's something about going back in time to our adolescence, right? When things were maybe a little more simple.
And in that initial
Yeah. We have few. Yeah, exactly.
in that initial era, you published some, like a handful of adventures that went on to be converted to DCC RPG, I believe, right? Like, was Tower of the Black Pearl one of those?
Yeah, I mean, this versions of this conversation come up all the time because we published a lot of really great adventures. You know, I did number 3. Brendan wrote number 11. Harley wrote number 17. Chris Doyle wrote number 7. Those are some points where people sort of entered the ecosystem, let's call it, you know, and then became regulars thereafter. And a lot of other people wrote great adventures too. And over the years, even in the 4th edition era and in 5th edition, people keep asking, well, can you convert that one? Can you convert that one? So we've converted a number of them to mostly to DCC and a few to 5th edition. But part of me hates going back. I hate revisiting the past. Like I was in the nostalgia and the excitement and like the emotional content. But there's a lot of companies out there that just keep rehashing the same. And so we did reprint some and convert them mostly to fill gaps in the production schedule. Like early on, DCC was really popular, far more so than I thought it would be. And so there was this time when we were like, oh my goodness, we need to get more stuff out there because people keep asking. And it was easy to convert. Now I'd much rather work on, we have some really cool stuff in the pipeline. So I'd rather work on new creations. And I don't know, let the old stuff. What's that saying about Cthulhu? Let that which does not die slumber still, or whatever it is, you know?
Right. I mean, if you really want to play it, it's not that terribly difficult to convert on your own anyway.
Yeah, especially once you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
You can get into it a little bit. So you glanced at it once. Last question on the past. How did you what was the spur? You mentioned 4th edition. So how did 4th edition kind of trigger DCC RPG?
Yeah. It's so funny. So I next year is Gummy Games 25th anniversary. I found a very old piece of paper. I mean, literally a piece of paper that I printed 24 years ago and stuck in a folder. I have a storage unit, and I'm like going through the storage unit because we're going to do like a 25th anniversary book and probably like a 25th anniversary art book, which will be really fun. So I'm sorting through. I mean, I guess I'm a pack rat, just like stuff that I've had for 20 years. And I printed out a piece of paper 24 years ago, noting that my first Gummy Games release had landed at the warehouse on November, I think it was 14th or 15th of 2001.
Wow.
So there's so that and this process of thinking about this book we're going to do. I've just started going down memory lane and I don't know, revisiting a lot of stuff. Do you guys know who Stu Horvath is from the Vintage RPG podcast?
Yep.
And he wrote that book. Yeah, Monsters, Aliens, and Holes in the Ground.
Yeah.
He's awesome guy and a great writer. He is interviewing me each week. We're doing like an hour or two each week where he's basically just asking me lots of questions about, sequentially like the origin of Gummy Games.
Wow.
And that's triggering all these thoughts. And he's going to pull this together and be the author of the book about the history of Gummy Games. And it's actually great because you know how memory works. You remember something, then your brain starts churning while you're sleeping, and then like 2 days later, you're like, oh, that's right, I remember this thing now. So I haven't thought about a lot of this until you know very recently, and now I'm thinking about it, remembering. Um, so I'm gonna kind of answer your question, Julia, but you guys jump in and interrupt me because like there's so many angles of it. But like one of the things I remember was some of us went to D&D Experience 2009, which is now called Winter Fantasy, I think, but in Fort Wayne where they run the D&D organized play, the biggest event, and it was several of us, but I specifically remember me, Doug, and Harley were on that trip, and we went there to publicize our fourth edition products. You know, because 4E was out, and that was ground central for D&D 4E fans, and nobody bought them because you know 4E was kind of the first
Yeah.
6 months or so. Like the first 3 months were fantastic. I got placed in borders, you know, like I got huge orders, bigger than I'd ever seen before because we did it right. We had a product line that was well built. And then people started playing the game and nobody liked it. And none of the retailers restocked it, you know, and it was like 3 to 6 months of great sales and then 2 years of like horrendous sales. Uh, and so there was this time frame of like, how do we fill that void? But I remember going to D&D Experience and I had not read much Appendix N at that point. And Harley had read a bunch. You know, different people had read their different things, but certain people had read a lot of Lankmar. Doug had read a ton of Lankmar and Clark Ashton Smith. Like I remember this trip, it was like this kind of 4 or 5 day trip to a con, and somehow I don't think the word Appendix N per se came up, but this concept of pulp fiction came up, and that's what led me down this rabbit hole of like investigating, then investigating deeper, and finally spending like 3 years just reading it all. Um, so that was part of it. And then from a business perspective, you know, fourth edition was terrible. Like a lot of the business activities of Gummy Games kind of frankly wound down because the sales were so bad. I was canceling projects and didn't have active projects to release and needed to find something else. And then separately, Doug and I had been, we lived right near each other in Chicago for 4 or 5 years, and I'd moved to San Diego at that point. But we had several camping trips together, and we're just sort of, you know, in this void that existed of what can I publish. We started discussing like what would be really cool to do, you know, and we both had similar interests in both old school art and old school game design. And this was when the OSR was starting. What became the OSR? Grognardia, that blog was starting around then.
Oh, right, right.
This was before, yeah, and as you may know, like Gary Con, there was a pre-Gary Con called the Lake Geneva Gaming Convention, which was run by Trollword Games. So I went to that a couple times back before, and that Gary Con, like Gary Con 0 and Gary Con -1 and Gary Con -2 were basically run by Steve Chenault in Lake Geneva. So I went to one or two of those because I could drive up from Chicago. And it was just kind of the beginning of all this exciting energy around everybody hitting a certain, I don't know, age or place in life where they're looking back and reinvestigating the early days of D&D and what their influences were. So between like having the bandwidth on the Gummy Game side to do more product development because the other activities were winding down because of 4E, and making contact with a lot of, I don't know, energetic, enthusiastic people. And I think meeting Michael Curtis helped. He was doing the Dungeon Alphabet blog entry, and publishing that book was kind of a trial run for the look and feel of what DCC RPG would be. It's kind of the perfect storm. And then I remember specific parts of it, like the funnel. I believe I invented the concept of the funnel. Like D&D, or I should say TSR, had done 0 level adventures before, but I don't think anybody had done 4 0 levels at once.
No,
You know, pick the
no,
one that survives.
no. You just ran
Yeah, I
one
can't find any
character.
examples of it.
There's two of them that we did this in a
Yeah,
show a couple of years ago, I think,
Yeah,
where we talked
yeah.
about 0 level play, and there was like two adventures that came out, and 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 that was really the start of some of these like uh, artisan, like craftsman kind of classes and all this other stuff too. Actually, and in fact, they didn't even. That was even before all that, I think, because that was like a two. Anyway, I don't want to get. We've already run that ship aground, but there was two adventures for sure that tried to do 0 level kind
okay.
of concepts
Yeah.
from
We
TSR.
we do have two
Yeah,
great funnel episodes, one way back in 2013 and one just a year or two ago. So listeners, check them out. But
Check that one out.
yeah,
yeah. So
But
yeah, so and we even Goodman Games, we published DCC number 0, which is a, you know, Legends are born, not, I forget, but you know, so 0 level have been around, not funnels.
made not born.
Yes, made not born. There you go. Yeah. And now, you know, other games have taken it and called it the grinder. Like now it's becoming a trope. When I tell
right.
people though, it's not like I invented the saving throw. I borrowed saving throws from people before me. Now people borrowed the funnel from me. But talking to Stu made me remember something that I totally forgot. I used to run games for all my little cousins at the family reunions. So once every year, my mom's side of the family would get together, And I'd run, and actually at PAX Unplugged, I just saw one of my second cousins who's now like in his 30s and has a girlfriend and a job. But like many years ago, I would run games for him when he was a teenager at their family reunions. And I still remember running them all through a third edition game. And there were, these four younger cousins plus my one or two cousins my age. And this third, you got to spend like hours on character creation.
Oh
I just
yeah.
remember like we made it nowhere, and nobody had fun.
Yeah.
And so I remember, yeah,
Yeah.
I remember this moment of trying to, and I went back and I found all the old family photos, like me playing Catan with my younger cousins. And then like 2 years later, I'm playing DCC RPG with them because the funnel allowed me to get all my, 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-old cousins gaming within 10 minutes. We were right there, ready to go, characters in the dungeon. And it totally simplified Karagen, which was like a major obstacle and burden to playing up until that point. So I think it was a lot of things coming together over a period of several years, and somehow the magic happened in a way that you can't necessarily replicate. But it was great. I'm glad it happened.
So here we are, 13 years have passed. I rattled off in our intro all that, huge number of quality adventures, then all these crazy projects, Purple Planet and Lankmar and Shutter Mountains and Dying Earth and so many things, Mutant Crawl Classics. And as you were just saying, luck, funnel, magic where you have to roll a d20. DCC has totally made its mark. What where are we now? What's your take on the present moment? If you can see the trail kind of ascending from 2009 up the hill. Now you're standing on this plateau with with further peaks out in front of us. But what are you seeing at the present?
Should we? I
And
hear that
actually,
there's somebody at the door.
I understand.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Is Judge Jin
Yeah, I think she's finally showed up for the show she's on.
Should we just take a second and let her join? I haven't got a text.
Alana, Mistress Alana, can we be right back and get Jen in here?
Tell me now, what could it be that calls us so incessantly onward to a haunted shore? Though we don't know what lies in store, do we sail to claim a prize or blindly go to our demise? If you recall, can you tell me why we sail this starless sea?
Judge J plus plus, and we're good to go.
So, sorry, just to reset. We talked about the past. That's a great summary, Joseph. Thank you. Tell us about a present. Where are we now? And what I'd love to hear. I'm sure you're like, hey, we did really cool stuff, and I loved it. But what surprises you the most when you look I think there's been a lot of success, but there's still got to be stuff that is like you go, wow, that happened.
Honestly, what surprises me the most is that people are still playing DCC RPG. Like, if you look at the history of role playing games, most games have a life cycle of 3 to 5 years max.
Hmm.
D&D is probably the only one that lasted longer, and even D&D new editions typically have a life cycle of 3 to 5 years max, which is why they do a 3.5 or a 2024 edition or things like that. Um, it is highly unusual for any RPG to last 13 years without any kind of major revamp, update, second edition, whatever. In the history, as a student of the industry, this is to a large extent unprecedented. And to be honest, I always planned for it to end. Right? Harley designed a board game that I told him we're going to publish this like next year, and that was in like 2014. Because I just assumed the RPG would slow down. So one of these days we'll publish that, but it's kind of amazing how much enthusiasm and interest there is. Yeah, it's actually a great game, Jen. So one of these days we'll get it out there. But it's amazing. And I never expected that, and we'll keep doing it as long as people are interested in it. But I think there's an old saying. My parents were not exactly career minded. The only career advice I ever got was do what you love and the money will follow, which is really terrible advice. Because there's a lot of ways to do what you love that we've all seen it. The money never followed. Uh,
Yeah.
so but it's working. I'm glad other people like it, and whatever we're doing, something about it works, and people are interested. So we'll just try to keep doing what the word you hear all these days is authentic. We'll try to keep being authentic, whatever that means. But I think if you just do what you like and people sense that, other people, yeah, I know, man, like that. It's like, I know, but yeah, we'll keep trying to do what we like, and hopefully other people like it too.
How much of the staying power has been the staying power of the fifth edition game? Because I know I've heard you say, that 5e and the enthusiasm around it and just all the millions of gamers it brought in is good for the entire industry and good for all the other games too, including us. And it's actually had a lot of staying power. It did just kind of get this revamp, which I don't know that much about, but even then, it also kind of has hung on for that same amount of time, if I'm thinking about the timing right.
Yeah. So 5e is fascinating to me in a lot of ways. I've known Mike Burles for a very long time, and I remember in like year 1 or 2 of 5e, he told me, he's like, "Yeah, the 5e Player's Handbook is now outsold the third edition, like the entire lifetime of third edition. The 5e Player's Handbook outsold it like a year and a half or 2 years in, which is phenomenal, right?" Then I want to say a year or two later, he told me, "Yeah, the 5e Player's Handbook, we're now whatever it is, 4 or 5 years in. It's now outsold every edition of D&D ever. Like it outsold the sum total of first, second, third, and fourth players' handbooks. In all variants,
Hmm.
AD&D, Red
Hmm.
Box, whatever. Like 5e is unprecedented in the history of D&D. It is extraordinary as an edition and extraordinarily popular. Um, and part of it, you can always point to confluences of events. In first edition we had the steam tunnel situation, which nobody remembers nowadays, but that made a big difference in first edition. For fifth edition, there was Stranger Things, which really brought D&D back into
Hmm.
the mainstream. And there was
Hmm.
COVID, which I think actually helped a lot. And there was different things. D&D in various ways became more mainstream and more acceptable. Suddenly I wasn't the weird kid. It's really weird to me now with the other dads and one of my kids' schools. I'm not the weird kid. I'm like the cool kid, and I'm like, when did that happen? But I know it's gonna like it'll change course any day now. Just you wait. But there's this. I was talking to Doug the other day. He's like, Joe, the thing that you and I have in common is we just don't quit. And I was like, you're right. Like, I'll be doing this when I'm 95 in the nursing home. And D&D will be at some sort of peak or valley at that point, and I'll still be doing the same thing.
Hmm.
And I think fifth edition though has brought in a generation of gamers in the same way that I think first edition brought in a generation of gamers. And what's
Hmm.
really fascinating to me is I have an emotional attachment to old school TSR cover design, right? And I have an emotional attachment to blue maps inside the covers. Those to me, like you said, James, fond memories of playing D&D and eating pizza and drinking bad soda and watching ET and being like, they're playing D&D, in like a real movie,
Right.
like remember that? We were all like totally stoked.
Because that
So
would
like
never
that
happen.
to me,
That would never happen
right.
in media.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Who was I talking to who was just telling me that there's an old episode of, I think it was Silver Spoons, where there was like D&D visible in the back. They went to a
Hmm.
store and like you could see D&D on on their like fake
Okay.
shelves. So like
Nice.
um 5e did that again. 5e brought in millions and millions and millions and millions of gamers, which is awesome. And their emotional attachment is to a completely different thing. Like their emotional attachment is to the art of Hydro 74. Does that name ring a bell for you guys? Because I think for some of us old school gamers, it doesn't even ring a bell.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Hydro?
No, well,
Hmm.
Google Hydro 74 art, and you'll see all the variant covers that WotC did for their 2014 era D&D covers. And I think for
Hmm.
many modern gamers, that has the same emotional attachment that Arrow Lotus has for me, and clearly for you,
Hmm.
Julian, based on your background. Um, yeah, exactly. The look and feel of TSR, that old like horizontal image with the little yellow stripe in the corner, that look and feel of cover art, which to me is very emotionally charged, I think means nothing to gamers who came in 2014. But that font that TSR or sorry, the Wizards use, which is I don't even know the name of the font, but it's like white and vertical and has a black border, and like all the 2014 covers use that font. I think in the same way
Hmm.
that
And these
Hmm.
sharp
for us,
serifs.
yes, exactly. That has a connotation. So I think that D&D has brought in a generation of gamers that have different associations, um, which are really strong and emotionally charged. And I think what we at Gimmy Games can do is to recognize that that's just as good as anything else. Like I try to talk people out of the edition wars. It's just another way of starting with D&D, and I try to remind people of how they came to DCC RPG. Like we do surveys of our crowdfunding backers. Um, Mostly like, what edition of D&D did you start with? The number of people who started with 5e is steadily growing. It's small. It's 12%. Whereas first edition we get roughly 45-ish%. But that 12% means we're doing something that is of interest to people who came in the last 10 years. But the other really interesting fact, 97% of our backers come to DCC RPG having started with D&D. So when people, start the edition wars and say, well, DCC is so much better than 5e, I don't, when I say it differently, which is I think the 5e players just are DCC fans who don't know it yet. Like the reason we published 5e is because that is how we bring our aesthetic to people who don't need, it's a much easier transition if you don't have to change your game system. You don't have to talk your group into trying a new game. You just show them a product that's inside their current campaign and current style of play, but maybe the art's a little different or the style of, something that we do. We show player characters getting slaughtered all the time, beheaded, dismembered, killed in a pit, eaten by a monster. If you look at Wizards of the Coast art, they never show characters dying, ever. Characters never die in the art.
Well,
Characters die
that's
all the
because
time in
characters
art.
don't
Like,
die
on the cover.
and that's because no characters die in that edition.
There is that too, yes. But
Which leads to unrealistic expectations for reality, right?
Of course.
Yes.
I mean, we're all gonna die, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry.
So we're doing in January. We're doing Old School Adventures #1 on BackerKit, and Chris Lindsay was talking to me about the manuscript, and the editor wrote back. The editor sent back the manuscript with a bunch of edits, and made a comment like, "This adventure is brutal." Like I can't remember the exact phrasing, but the editor was basically like, for a 5e adventure, like this is going to kill half the party. Chris was like, right, that's the goal. We're bringing like a different style of play. And so for me to offer that to 5e players is bringing to them a sensibility and an aesthetic and an approach and a style that is, really halfway to DCC RPG. And if they can play that and appreciate it, then they are ready for, they have passed the initiation rites. They're ready for DCC RPG. And I think we all remember when you start playing D&D in middle school or high school, whatever it is, it's super cool. But then after 3 to 5 years, you're ready for something else. And back in the 80s, maybe we went on to GURPS or Car Wars or, whatever it was, BattleTech.
World of Darkness.
Right? World of Darkness, yeah. Whereas now I want them to assess their options and say, wow, D&D's cool, but I've been playing it 3 to 5 years. I graduated from college now. All my friends dispersed. I need a new group. Let's try out this DCC thing because I played a 5e supplement by Goodman Games. And it was pretty cool. My guy died, and I actually liked the risk, So I'm calling this the old school aesthetic or the aesthetic of old school. There's something about old school that isn't necessarily rules. It's more like approach and style and look and feel and the way your game plays and risk of death and lethality and all this stuff. And that's what we're trying to accomplish on the 5e side. It's still old school. Whatever the aesthetic of old school is, it's just a different style of 5e. That was a very long-winded answer. Hopefully, Julia, that helps you. I don't know if that was what you were interested in or not.
You hit a funny thing because I hear newbies and people who claim they don't like DCC. You hear, well, I don't want to buy those extra dice, and I'm like, how weird are you that you're the one gamer who doesn't like to have dice? I mean, whatever. I don't pay much attention there, but also you hear a lot of people go, well, it's too deadly. And then you say, well, yeah, you've played funnels and a lot of people die. And first level play is pretty dangerous, but as you get up in level, it's not that lethal, right? It's more like, old school D&D. Like you get more hit points and you have better healing and no. But I think the art scares them off too. So I'm glad you bring that up. I think they're looking at the alligator's got a 2 peasants in his maw with the teeth closed on them, and there's 2 guys with pitchforks trying to kill the alligator, and they're not even making a dent, and they're scared. So well, that's good.
They're scared, and they're used to 5e where it takes I don't know how many hours to make a new character. So the risk of character death really is traumatic because they're thinking, Jesus, now I got to go roll up a new character. Whereas we need to remind them it takes 5 minutes, man. Or you use Purple Sorcerer and it takes like as long as your printer takes, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
No session 0.
Right, and please no backstory.
Please no backstory.
Yeah.
So no, good summary. So let's talk about the future because it's all in, it's in your brain and it's not in my brain. So I want to hear, I want to look into the crystal ball and I want to hear about, what we're thinking about the next 13 years. Or maybe, that's a
Actually,
long way out. So maybe just the next 2, 3 years.
I think. What about some
yeah.
Hydro 74 covers?
Well, we have one coming. So one is
Oh,
commissioned. I just saw the sketch last night. It's
nice.
awesome. Yeah, and we're gonna do that more on the 5e side, but it just got me thinking about obviously Spellburn is DCC specific, but like there's this aesthetic of old school that can bring 5e players in. So it got me thinking about lots of cool possibilities for variant covers. We did I have all this stuff right behind me. Let me grab something.
It's
Glad
like
we-
looking at
This is
Silver
actually
McGee's closet.
Yeah, this is a 5e product, Terra from the Underdeep, but this is the clamshell edition of. Look at that
Oh.
shine, man! The clamshell edition of the box. This is like the advanced printer copy I just got. So this is what we will do for Castle White Rock and for Pinball Crawl Classics. So when you open this box, it's not a traditional, setup box. Look at that! It's
Right.
amazing. This is
Right.
elastic straps holding the book. You got all the other books here. You can take the books out. And the inside, we print it on the inside. It can stand up as like a GM screen. Like it's really awesome. So we're experimenting with new everythings, including new box printing techniques to bring this to both 5e and DCC. But I want to keep developing the approach and the aesthetic. The other really cool thing we have in the works, which I feel like Jen, I might have showed you these, but you said crystal ball. How about crystal DCC die? So we have, this is cut glass. This is, I believe, the 30-sider. So I just got in the samples for the crystal set, the amethyst set.
Yes, please.
This is amethyst. Yeah, this turned out great. And then the bloodstone, they're calling it. So these are actually cut stone or cut glass. If you can see this.
Wow.
And we got
So
the
they're
full
not-
run, right?
We're not talking clear plastic. We're talking their actual
Minerals from the ground.
Wow.
Actual minerals.
Hefty.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the 7-sider, if you can see that. This is the first time we've ever done molding for it's not resin, it's not acrylic. Those are the traditional materials. I mentioned these because they're literally just sitting on my desk because I just got the samples like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of cool stuff in the works for DCC fans,
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that.
So that's that. I feel like it's a very broad question. Let me think for a moment. Would it help if I kind of ran down the plan for next year's big Kickstarters, or you'll give me
Yes.
something more specific? There's
Yes,
just a lot
but
of...
but first I'm going to pitch you on an amazing idea. I think you switch it and you have Hydro do a bunch of DCC covers, and then you get the Dougs and Steffens to do a bunch of 5e product covers, and that way Jim Scatch will have to buy all the 5e products too, because if you have DCC, it'll go in. Right? It's not just Jim. I mean, there's many completists out there. Right?
Yeah. Thank you. You're gonna bankrupt me now.
Well, right.
Because Bob's gonna need like 8 of every.
Well,
at
correct.
least.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, Bob will have written about a third of them, so he'll have a comfort.
Plenty of artist copies sitting around.
Still,
I'm sure.
but still, yeah. Anyway,
Sorry, you mentioned Jim Scatch. You mentioned the old days. That reminds me. Did you guys ever hear the story of Harley's first game with Jim Scatch, Connor Scatch, Haley Scatch? Do you guys know this story?
No.
We again, Stu was prompting all these thoughts, and I just came across the photo. It was GaryCon 2 that Doug, Harley, and I went to, and I think 2010 maybe. And I was running, the game had no name at that point. I was running playtests of this game I'm working on, and some people played. And we still have the photo of the Scatch family sitting at the table. But the thing that was amazing was Haley Scatch was, I think, 7 maybe at that time, 6. Her and her brother are really young. And you got to ask Harley because he actually ran the game. I remember this one moment that at the time I thought was like, a kid really did that. And now knowing Haley, it totally fits. In the game, there was some scene where they're like, climbing up a cliff and everybody falls off the cliff. And, I remember Haley's character is like holding onto the edge of the cliff, and one of the other PCs like slips off and grabs her leg, and is like hanging off her leg. And Harley's like, okay, Haley, so-and-so's, his character is hanging on your leg, but he's pulling you down, how are you going to get out of this situation? You're going to reach down and help him or toss him a rope? And Haley says, no, I cut off his arm. So she cut off his arm.
That's how you become a champion.
And she's like 6 or 7. Yes, exactly.
That's how you become a
And Harley,
champion.
you got to ask Harley.
Tournament winning player is you
Yep.
just look out for
Tournament
number
champion.
one.
Tournament champion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
It was amazing. Sorry, that was a distraction. That was
No, that's
Matt,
great.
but
Great.
yeah.
That's great. I thought I had all the Haley stories because I have a few, but that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I do want to hear the Kickstarters. Now we've talked a fair amount about Castle White Rock, which is awesome. I mean, you should still hit that too, but we've talked a lot about it already.
Right.
Okay.
And it's in my crowdfunding list too. But I want to. We've never really talked about Pinball Crawl Classics yet, so that's pretty cool. And then everything else, there's stuff out there beyond that I don't know about. So yeah, lay it on us.
Yeah, and actually, James, you wrote was it Swords of Fury? Is that the one you're working on for Pinball Crawl Classics?
That's right. That's right. And Julian wrote Embryon. Is that right?
Embryon.
Yeah.
Embryon.
Yeah, Mike was just telling me.
Activated.
Yes.
Embryon.
Yeah.
Functional.
Yes. Those games are so great. Yeah, man, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's so much pinball around here. Actually, the Pacific Pinball Hall of Fame, I think they call it, Pacific Pinball Museum, is about 45 minutes away from me, and they have like 150 pinball machines, something like that. It's easy to get into it around here. I now, my office is like a couple blocks away from this coffee shop that makes very fancy coffee where they like individually brew every batch, and you got to wait like 15 minutes while they, anyway. I mostly go there for the pinball because they have pinball in the back, and you have to wait like 20 minutes for your coffee anyway every time. So
all works together.
Yeah, exactly. So I like pinball and the art. Nowadays it's all like Stranger Things licenses, but back in the late 70s, early 80s, pinball had its own stories. And so Gorgar, Embryon, Centaur, Swords of Fury, Cosmic Gunfighter. The only story is the story you see on the back glass and the playing field, what's described in the art, and you can totally make up in your own mind amazing stories from that.
You know what? It's so funny when I got the assignment for Swords of Fury, I'd never played the game for whatever reason. I played I think all the other ones I'd played, but I got this one. I was like, I don't know.
Okay.
And I was like, and so it has all this Nordic runes around the cabinet and all over the place.
That's right. Yeah.
And I was like, what does this say? Is there like some hidden story in these runes? And I put it through, and it was all like Avenger, Lion Man, multi-ball.
Yes.
Yes. I was like this random. Is a terrible story. This is just what the game
but
is.
That's all of the audio bits from the game too.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that's over at the warehouse. Come on over.
Okay. No one showed me last time I was at the warehouse.
Yeah. So it's probably the vintage aspect, probably just the fun aspect, probably just the I don't know. This is the kind of thing that I think only we would ever do. And honestly, I'm not really sure how it's going to work out. So, it's another one that we all kind of like pinball. We all kind of like D&D. Let's see what happens, And then Michael Curtis had a fantastic idea. When we were talking about the clamshell, did he tell you about the clamshell for Pinball Crawl Classics?
Said there was going to be a clamshell. I don't know what it's going to be like, but he said there's going to be one.
So like this one, opens on the long edge. His idea was hinge it on the short edge. So it opens like this. So it looks like a pinball machine.
Yeah.
And so we're going to print the back glass art here, probably Gorgar, not sure. And like the playing field art here. So you open it. And then the coolest part, this is crazy. Yeah. Don't tell anybody. But remember Gorgar, where it has 8 words, right?
Yes.
Gorgar, kill, you. And they make all these sayings. So you remember Hallmark cards, right? Happy birthday.
I know where this is going.
Oh, man.
Yes. So my printer is pretty sure she can make it say, Gorgar, kill you, when you open the box. So really, I'm becoming a box manufacturer, but that's the goal, It's going to be super cool.
I think you need a special, like a set of legs that you can also put it on. Maybe a plunger. I don't know.
Yeah.
You get your own little legs from IKEA. That's fine.
Well, I think, or sell some, 3D printed file to do it.
So Judge Bob is doing Centaur.
Yep.
Judge Brendan is doing Cosmic Gunfighter.
Cosmic Gunfight. And which one are we leaving out? Oh, Mark Bruner.
Bruner has Gorgar.
And Mark
There
Bruner
we
has
go.
Gorgar. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that
Super jealous.
so 5 adventures, 2 MCC, 3 DCC, I believe, right? I
Yeah,
believe that's
exactly.
how it shook out. Yeah, so that's going to be cool. I'm super psyched for that, and I'm super psyched for that. That sounds cool. Now, let's talk about Castle White Rock for a second. Is there any now we as I said we talked about it, but I think when the last time we were talking about it, I was doing a little bit of conversion on it, and I've been looking at again and again and again at all the PDFs. And Joseph, you have a really good way of summarizing stuff. So maybe you've got the 30-second thing, but how do you try to communicate the scope of this thing to people? Because how giant it is, how much content is in this thing. It's a giant, accomplishment. Even, even in the old days, and now bringing it to DCC and 5e both, and then it's going to have all this extra stuff now in addition to what's there and then made ready, right?
Yeah, no, it honestly is hard to describe, but it's basically a 30-level mega dungeon, classic iconic dungeon, but beneath the city in the ruins, or sorry, beneath the castle in the ruins under a castle, starting at the dungeons of the castle, then going deeper and deeper and deeper. It's big enough that you, in the end, confront a dragon. Actually, not just one dragon, 2 dragons at the end, which is a little bit of the Easter egg in the plot. And what's going to make it exciting is not just 30 levels that take you to to whatever it is, level 10, I think it is. I think it takes you all the way to the top. But we are working with, actually, we're doing 2 things. So first, we're working with Kobold Press, Monty Cook, Ghostfire Games, a ton of other publishers to. Did I tell you about Mega Dungeon Month, or did you guys see the announcement?
It's in April, right?
Yeah. So yeah, April's going to be Mega Dungeon Month on BackerKit, and a lot of us are launching Mega Dungeons at the same time. It'll operate in the same landing page. We're going to work out some details, but some sort of cross-project stretch goals. So if you back ours and Troll Lords and Monty Cooks and Kobold Presses and Ghostfire Games, you get a bonus item of some kind. So lots of details to work out there. But just that they all appreciate Mega Dungeons too. Like Steve from Troll Lord is doing Castle Zagig, the next installment. That'll launch alongside Castle White Rock. So I think it's going to be a lot of people who appreciate old school dungeon crawling in its purest form. But then in addition to that, what's even cooler is there's about a dozen indie DCC publishers who are also participating and plugging into Castle White Rock. So the concept is, let's imagine that you're on level 7 of White Rock, and there's a tunnel that goes off and ends in a cave-in. And in most adventures, that would be it. Like there's a cave-in, you kind of walk away. We say, well, what if Horse Shark Publishing wants to plug in and say this cave-in on level 7 actually extends into a area that's the lair of the blank, and there's 7 more rooms. So each of these indie publishers is sort of plugging into the overall Mega Dungeon in their own way. Yeah, some of them are doing traditional dungeon plugins. Others, it's more sort of source book material or illustrated player handouts. And they expand on the dungeon. So if the existing 30 levels aren't enough, there'll be a number of other publishers to support. And then a super cool thing is that Mark Bruder, as the project lead for Castle White Rock, has actually outlined what he's calling the lost level. So it's a map of rooms that are sort of heretofore undiscovered. And each of the indie DCC publishers will contribute 1 room. So if you back Castle White Rock, you get the map with lost level, room 1, room 2, room 3. To get the contents of room 2, you have to back this thing from Gaming Honors or this thing from Horse Shark Publishing, and you wind up discovering the full lost level. So it's a really cool way for a lot of people to collectively build this awesome mega dungeon and make it even bigger.
Is there going to be a pledge level where you are given like a time continuum stop where you can actually play this adventure before you die of old age?
Yeah, I know. I know. That's called going back to high school. Like when we all the summer free,
Right.
I know.
A free time stop spell.
Just cash out all the PTO. You're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, just do
retirement.
When we were 14, we started at about 6:30 p.m. and we played till about 3 a.m., 4 a.m., right? Just Mountain Dew and pizza and cheese curls and whatever. And, Well,
so
great.
The old version will be we get up at 6 a.m.
Oh, it's hurtful, James.
7 o'clock tonight.
I know.
Playing Castle White Rock.
We have 2 naps. We have 2 naps.
There's 2 naps for sure.
Yeah.
Where's my applesauce? It's applesauce break time.
There's a med break. We gotta have our meds.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, very nice. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to Castle White Rock. That's gonna, man, to see that thing in its glory and a new it's gonna be
Oh,
pretty
and
cool.
that'll have a clamshell box. Again, not sure what the contents of it will be, and unless no sound chip, unless somebody has another crazy good idea. But that's actually where we're thinking. San Julia did an amazing cover for it, and we're thinking of actually getting Hydro 74 to do the cover to the clamshell for 5e, and we were just talking about for the cover to the DCC clamshell, what we're going to do for that. So I have some ideas, but I don't want to say them yet because they're not they're not in stone. But it'll be another set of really cool options. Yeah. You mentioned something earlier, Julie, that I want to circle back on, the idea of having Doug do 5e art. So we're doing something. So it's funny. The name of the game is Dungeons and Dragons. Gumming Games obviously leaned in hard to the dungeon side. It occurred to me we haven't done much with the dragon side, and dragons are really one of the most popular components of D&D, like for good reason. So you're going to see more dragon themed releases coming out from us, and I think it's, I don't know how we didn't see this, but everybody loves a good dragon, whether it's as as an NPC because they're wise and powerful and ancient, or as an enemy because they, stole the whatever. But so we're gonna have something called the Dragon Riders Primer, which is 5e only, and it's 5e rules for it's not yet intelligent dragons. By the way, have you guys read Fourth Wing?
I know of it. It's a very, very popular novel series, right?
Yeah, exactly. They call it romantasy because it's
Yeah,
fantasy with a very yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know,
yeah.
James. You'll have to give up your Harlequins and make room on your shelf for for
It,
this.
it's I mean, I get that it's a little different genre and vibe, but it also sounds like Anne McCaffrey to me a little bit,
So funny.
right?
So what's funny
It's
is it
very
got me.
sweeping. Yeah.
Yeah, it got me rereading Pern. Actually, I went back and reread the first three Perns after I
Sure,
read the Fourth Wing trilogy.
right.
Um, it's very different. I mean, in a very broad sense, it involves riding dragons, but in the same way that like every Western involves riding horses, but they're so
Right. Right.
quite
Well,
quite different.
right.
So
Well, fair enough.
they're totally worth reading, both the Pern series and Fourth Wing. But Fourth Wing's awesome. It's the first time my 13-year-old is it's really in some ways young adult fiction, Fourth Wing, but it's just fantastically written, so it really pulls you in. So it's the first time my son and I were reading the same book at the same time, and I mean literally the same physical book at the
Oh,
same time. Every night it'd be like, "It's my turn to read it. No, it's my turn to read it." And there were like two bookmarks in it, and
I love
kept trying to
that so
spoil it.
much.
Guess what happens in the next chapter? Yeah. But it's really good. But anyway, read that. You'll see kind of the inspiration for where we're going. So, Dragon Riders Primer is about flying unintelligent mounts, but I think there's this whole thing to explore of flying intelligent mounts. They're almost another player character. How do you integrate sort of bonding with a super powerful dragon and gaining, magical powers from it? But Dragon Riders Primer is very much a 5e supplement. There is a DCC Dragon book that we're brainstorming on. That'll come further down. But Dragon Riders
I
Primer has
love
cover art by Doug
DCC
Kovacs.
dragons.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
no, for sure.
those
There's so much you can
tables.
do with that idea, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but the Dragon Riders Primer is a 5e book, but with Doug Kovacs cover art, but a 2014 style D&D cover treatment. So I think it is this kind of half step for people who've been playing D&D 5e for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe ready to move on from the WotC style. They'll see the Doug art, they'll see the interior art style that we all recognize, but it'll be a comfortable, pleasant place for 5e fans, but a half step towards DCRP.
Well, brilliant.
I have a question
Yeah.
about you guys kind of put out that die 24 advantage mechanic, right? Like last year.
With
How has
advanced
that
advantage? Yeah.
yeah, how's that kind of played out at the table? Like what can you tell us about that now that it's kind of been out there for a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah, so Chris Lindsay has come on as our head of 5e, his official title is Director of 5e Product Development. He started a couple months ago. And for those of you who don't know Chris, he worked at Wizards of the Coast for 20 years. He was there as the business manager on D&D during what I'll call the glory years of 5e. He helped launch D&D 5e, then took over the Adventurers Guild, which is their primary organized play program. He was the head of that for several years. He launched the DMs Guild, which is the PDF site for D&D 5e fans. And he eventually left, and he's more of a, let's call him a 2014 man, not a 2024 man. But he's been at Wizards through third, fourth, and fifth edition, has an incredible well of knowledge, and what I call a really deep appreciation of D&D in its purest sense. He's like the biggest D&D fan you can ever find, and he wants D&D to be as great as it can be. So advanced advantage is this idea of basically tweaking D&D rules to homebrew it and introduce new ideas to it that can take D&D and maybe make, I don't, let's call, if we call the 2024 edition maybe D&D 5.5, is there like a 5.75, which is slightly edgier, but still includes a lot of cool ideas. What I think Chris Lindsay's brought to the table, brought to that idea is instead of moving to a 5.75, there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily happy with the 2024 edition. I don't think we need to go to 5.75. I think we need to go back to like a 5.25. And Chris Lindsay has coined this term because 2024 is kind of a big change from 2014 in a lot of ways. He wants to take it back to what he identifies. I'm going to use his word, is the perfect word, and it tells you exactly what we're doing. OG5E. That's what Chris calls it. And
you get old enough, you see everything, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And to me, nostalgia about something that's, quote, only 5 years old, to me is not nostalgia. But if you're somebody for whom 5e was a formative experience, because that was to your point, James, that was the years you were in the basement playing D&D with your buddies, drinking Mountain Dew, or in college or in high school. It's those 4-year chunks that define certain aspects of youth. OG 5e for them is very meaningful. At least I think. I don't want to imprint, my words on people, but that's the vibe I've gotten from talking to people at cons,
Well, and just imagine like when second edition came out, and I know my age is showing, but I mean when second edition came out, like, and they were like, well, we don't call them demons and devils anymore. We call them Tazanu and Tazinda, whatever. And you're just like, I got my frickin' monster manual right here. They're demons and devils till I die. Like, you come and pry this out of my hands. Like we were OG AD&D back in the day, right? We didn't.
That's very true. That is true, right? Like,
and having said that, we took the best of second ed, right? And then we just played with whatever older stuff we wanted, and obviously, right? So yeah.
And a lot of people do it now. They're taking the best of 2014 to their other or 2024 or some other game system. And I think what Chris Lindsay is doing, which is really great, is saying what is the best of 2014. But there were some things to tweak, like any game system. We don't need to go as far as 2024 went, but what do we do that makes OG5E something that really still resonates with those OG5E players? And so that's, to your question, James, that's where Advanced Advantage is evolving. We're actually going to, in the crowdfunding in January, we're going to have what would have been the next installment of Advanced Advantage. It's going to be called the OG5E Journal. And as you guys know, Mike Merles is the guy who designed D&D 5e, was their lead designer on the 2014 edition. He's actually probably going to write a column. Chris Lindsay games with him, so I think Chris has been twisting his arm. But we're trying to get Mike to contribute some material and make this kind of a exploration of all the things that made 2014 really, like, there's a reason it was so popular, right? Like 4th edition is an example of how do you launch D&D with a game that's underlying not popular and not good, and 4th flopped, whereas 5e was wildly successful, probably because Mike and his design team made a really fun game. And then all these other things happened, like Stranger Things and COVID, but underlying it all was a really fun game. So how do we distill that and then use that to introduce what I call the old school aesthetic, right? How do we introduce those players to what does old school look like, both visually, right? Is it black and white interior art and a certain style of hand painted cover art? Or is it gameplay? Is it risk of character death? Is it, I call it like floppy boots, pointy hats, wooden wands, collared capes. Like there's certain visual indicators that immediately scream old school when you see a character attired in them, What are these things that are old school indicators, old school aesthetic that we can introduce 5e players to?
well, what about DCC aesthetics? Like, just like you're talking about old school, but what about like the stuff that is DCC and kind of bringing that more to the forefront in the 5e products?
I think we should. I mean, that's what Old School Adventures #1 is trying to do in January. It's our first, I think, we've been doing 5e stuff for like 10 years. It's our first overt, I shouldn't say that, because Caverns of Thracia, for example, is obviously old school. So is Dark Tower, and those were 5e supplements.
I'm not talking about the narratives or the adventures, but like mechanics, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Old School Adventures is probably the first overt attempt to create something totally new that really taps into the old school aesthetic and old school vibe. And I agree with you, James. Like I want to. There is this place where people are moving on from 2014 D&D to something else, and how do we meet them halfway? Because getting your whole game group to convert to a new system, that's hard. But getting them to run an adventure where they face the risk of death, that's not so hard. And then if they like it, the first hit's free. Then you give them the next hit.
As usual. Like I think even about
Yeah,
like the
good.
3.5, you know, they made an attempt into luck, right? They had a bunch of feats around luck. And I'm not saying that that's the way to go because it was really clunky and bad and nobody used it. I don't think. I mean, that's at least my personal take on that era of D&D and those feats. But there's something, I don't know, something maybe to explore around luck and in D&D 5e facing products. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
Just
I
throwing that out
totally
there.
agree. That's the whole OG5E that Chris is sort of starting down that journey on. You know,
Okay.
what are all those? There's so much. We got to get Chris. Well, I mean, he's 5E. This is a DCC show, but like at some point, grab Chris at a con and talk to him and hear his thoughts because he has a lot of cool thoughts in this vein
Well,
from a completely different angle, from the perspective of a diehard D&D fan who's only played D&D for 20 years, you know,
Wow.
but still is very much into what I'll call the old school approach, and it is, you know, his particular way.
we probably got to wrap it up, Joseph. I do want to, but if is there anything you want to hit just for next year, you know, next year or two, or you know, anything future stuff you want to talk about? I have one last question for you.
Yeah, I'll mention two things quickly. I don't really have release dates for these yet, but well, actually, I do for one. In November, we're talking to the Gamehole Con folks about sponsoring Gamehole Con because that lands right around the date of our 25th anniversary. And we're going to do a crowdfunding for this 25th anniversary book, which Stu Horvath is sort of putting together and authoring. And the other part of that, though, is we're going to do an art book for the first time. People have been asking for an art book, I mean, for like a decade. And this
Right.
is, yeah, I know, Jen, it's going to be awesome. It's also a ton of work because I'm starting to go through 25 years worth of releases and asking myself, what's the best five? You know, like that's hard.
And at what point do we start reusing art?
I don't want, as much as possible, I don't
No.
want to. I'd rather create
I
new.
know.
But you're right, it's tempting because there's so many great images. So this is kind of the chance to reuse it and revisit it and say, what are Doug's 10 favorite pieces from his 15 or 20 years of working with us? You know, what are the best Air Lotus pieces that we've had the chance to publish? What are the all these amazing artists, Will, Stefan, Brad, San Julian, you know, I had the chance to publish Ian Miller art, which is incredible. It's just, there's so much amazing stuff. So that book's going to be amazing. And we're starting to brainstorm. If you've been reading the blog where we do the posts that are like, you know, Doug Kovacs, best covers, you know, Brad McDevitt, best interiors. Part of that is me starting to sort through tons of art and saying, let's also just turn into a blog article while we're there. So that one's exciting. Then the other one that is floating around in a lot of ways, let me just share this title because this title is amazing. And this was actually, you know, speaking of Chris Lindsay, like he's obviously on the 5e side. This title that I'm about to share, it was Chris Lindsay's idea. And we'll do this for 5e and DCC. But he is calling it Cesarcon's Eldritch Horrors and Ancient Evils. That is the name of the book he wants to publish. And
Wow.
it is everything that you think it is, the name of that. You know,
Yes,
and it's
please.
and we're talking about yes, a DCC version and a 5e version. You know, maybe half the content will overlap, then half will be patrons for DCC and something different for 5e. But there's so much you can do with that. You know, it's almost like a cosmic horror supplement for the two games.
Yeah.
So that we're circling around ideas for this, still like sort of brainstorming table of contents, and that might be Q3. The other thing I really want to do, I was at PAX Unplugged, and I can't tell you how many people came up asking to buy the DCC scratch off character sheets, which was like they've been out of print for years. Somehow they're like making the rounds again. I mean, I want to say like 10 customers came to the booth and are like, "Do you have those like scratch off sheets?" So that just got me thinking about doing a slightly different version of that. So part of me wants to somehow slot in a book of funnels, for lack of a better word. You know, maybe a slim hardcover of 5 or 10 cool funnels, and it comes packaged with, I don't know, 50 scratch off character sheets or something. So those are things that are floating around as ideas that may land in this year or future years TBD, but probably this year, along with this, you know, 25th anniversary box set. And then the other thing that I want to do a proper DCC starter set, not just the quick start rules, but something really designed for new players that makes it extremely easy for them to play their first adventure. And so Michael Curtis has had some good ideas on this. We've been brainstorming it, and that might crowdfund in, you know, November-ish alongside this 25th anniversary book. This idea of what is this true starter set for the person who came right out of 5e and they're sitting down to play for the first time. What do you give them that just shows them, you know, kicks them off right away to get started? You know, don't have to read a big book to get started.
But it has to be a red box.
And it has to have Errol Otis on the cover.
Well, See, that's where I say for certain audiences, yes, but coming out of 2014, no. That doesn't mean anything to.
It could be Hydro 74 with the guy with the
Yes,
spear
why
and the
not?
dragon. Like he's covering
Or
he's covering Arrow's best song like this. Couldn't
Yes,
it?
I
It could
love
be
that.
great.
no, that's actually not a bad idea at all. Or like a pitchfork to the dragon, like
Yeah, right.
Oh,
that's
yeah, right.
there's something to that.
Huh.
Yeah, that's pretty
I
cool.
would when you're doing that, is that kind of just a cooler, better deluxe quick start type thing, or are you actually thinking there's like a basic any like rules changes or anything?
No rules changes. I mean, the game is perfect, right? No, but
Yes.
not so much that, but
You're not wrong.
but I also think that that old thing of rulings, not rules. Like
Yeah.
so much should be. I think a certain amount should be up to the judge, and it's okay to have that be the case. And you don't need to get into fiddly widdly details on clarifying the drowning rules because you just tell the judge to make the call. But Michael Curtis actually had a fantastic idea for a starter set, which is to actually make an adventure that walks. Page 1 is let's roll up your characters real quick. Then page 2 is your first encounter. You fight the orc. Here's how combat works. Your second encounter, you fall into the pit trap. Here's how traps work. Like it's almost like an adventure that you start immediately. And as you hit encounters, instead of reading the book ahead of time, it explains succinctly the rules needed for that encounter. And then you get past it. Then you learn the rules needed for the next encounter. And by the time you're done, you've learned the rules for, casting a spell,
Right.
combat, traps,
Right.
luck,
It al-
whatever.
It almost sounds like this could stand up to solo play as well.
Yes, it's almost like a choose your own adventure, but with rules introduced along the way. It's a very clever way, I think, to introduce new play. So you don't even need a book, really. It's just introduction to play. And then he had some other ideas too, but it's still very much in the brainstorming phase. But Mike's idea, I think, is fantastic and is a good way to make it really easy to dive in. No barrier to entry.
It's a great idea to have a starter adventure that actually has a sidebar with the relevant rule right there, because
Yes.
because they need it there and they don't need it for anything else for any subsequent adventures, right? And I love it. That's a great idea. Well, that's terrific. I love to hear it. You're blowing my mind. Oh, this sounds awesome.
2026 is going to be a great year. 2025 has been between tariffs and diamond and all the craziness this year. It's been crazy. But 2026, I really feel like we're, there's only so many times I've looked forward to a new year, but this is one of them. And I feel like we have a lot of really great plans that are going to really come together in 2026 in an awesome way.
Cool. All right. Well, Joseph, thank you for being here so much. We really appreciate you. And it's been a great 13 years. We're going to have you on a little earlier than 13. Well, no, we had you on like 6 or 7 years ago or something, I think.
Once every 6 years, like clockwork.
Something like it. Well, we could beat that. But thank you so much. It's been great. We're going to let Joseph go and attend to his cauldrons and legions of beastmen. And we are going to just drop for a second and come back and do a quick crowdfunding. Well, that was great to have the Dark Master with us. Very pleased to have him. We'll revisit him soon, and it sounds like 2026 will be a great year. And I hadn't heard much about all these big fancy plans for Gamehole Con in 2026, but that's pretty exciting. So Gamehole Con in Madison in October. Uh, put it on your calendars now. Now we're going to move over to Crowdburn, and we have a few projects. We talked a fair amount about Pinball Crawl Classics, which is crowdfunding in January. Joseph talked about Castle White Rock and Mega Dungeon stuff, which is going to crowdfund in April. So we'll have the links of those like follow pages in our show notes, and they'll be ready to go in our show notes for you. Um, we got three other projects to mention. The first of which is X Crawl Rodeo from Cranky Clydesdale Publishing. This crowdfund is running through December 31st. And per our Clydesdale friends, we have produced an adventure for X Crawl Classics featuring rodeo events. There are 9 events that characters can compete in individually, as a team, or against each other, which sounds pretty cool to me. The event grounds hold small adventures where you can help vendors sabotage your opponents or cut side deals. Random event charts can change the pace of each event, and the mayhem caused by the headlining rock band's pyrotechnics keeps everyone on their toes. So that sounds pretty fun, and that again is running now and running through December 31st. Jen, are you ready with number 2?
I am. It is the Unnatural Selections Volume 4 from Luau Lu or Dandelion Games. This one's running through December 28th. And if you guys know those like half-size binders that are just full of monsters and critters for you, uh, this is a booster pack essentially with 60 new adversaries to put in your MCC games and fill those binders out.
Wow.
And the binders come with the deluxe versions of volumes 1 and 3.
Wow.
He's churning them out. Number
Yes.
4.
Yeah.
60.
He is.
Go
60.
Luau.
Wow.
Yeah. If you back in the well, okay, we're past the first 48 hours, but there's all sorts of stretch goals and fun stuff going on in there. So check it out.
Very nice. And of course, we just had Luau Lu on back in episode 145. You want to hear more and you didn't listen to that 6 months ago or whatever, 5 months ago, then go back and check it out. Yes. Episode 145, spellburn.com. Take a look at it. And James, what do you got for us?
Well, answering the question of how many crowdfunding projects does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of Crowdburn is 3. Tales of the Smoking Worm, 11. I tried. I don't know.
11? Wow.
I don't. It sounded good in my head, you know. Anyway, Tales of the Smoking Worm. Good God, number 11 is coming out. It's on BackerKit. It's running till the 23rd of the month. Of course, it's got all the favorite features that you've come to know and love from Trevor Stamper and Blind Visionary Games. There's a new patron in there, Tom Borio. I don't know, something Welsh at the end. I don't know what he's trying to do there.
Rude.
It's oozy things from the earth. So there you go. Ooze, rock, soil. Sounds like a winner. 7 patron missions included with that patron, I guess, too. Stuff to keep those guys, the bonded, busy. Culpepper's Herbals, some elemental critical tables. Ooh, all nice. 4 elements. And then Onward Retainer starring the Legion. I guess this is a comic, yes. So, and also a word puzzle, worm words. So check that out. Still running. I think they're fun. I'm sure they're funded. I don't know where they are in the stretch goals. You know it's going to be fantastic hand printed things that Trevor Stamper will give you. So
Oh
check
yeah.
that out.
Oh yeah, no, the production values on his stuff is off the hook, and also a recent Spellburn guest episode 143. Go back and
Ooh,
check him out.
goodness.
That was a fun episode. He is a crazy, he's his brain with the detail with a billion little compartments. Oh, I also hand print stuff. Oh, I also am a physicist,
Yes.
whatever he does. I like all that stuff.
I
Yeah,
solve
and
math proofs in my spare time.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. He just dropped stuff off today. So I'm like, yeah, you mean that guy?
exactly. Well, thanks everybody for being with us. Remember, we are now live streamed on the Goodman Games YouTube channel, YouTube at Goodman Games. And you can always, of course, catch us on spellburn.com or wherever good podcasts are broadcast or fed, I should say. If you've got a crowdsourcing thing you'd like us to plug, if you've got a Spellburn topic you'd like us to cover, or a guest you'd like to hear us quiz, or some random rules questions, or maybe most importantly, if you'd like to just give us an up or down vote on James's new beard,
Check
then
that out.
absolutely go ahead and email us at spellburnband@gmail.com. That's spellburnband@gmail.com.
But before we thank Glitter Wizard and Loot the Body and St. Karloff for all the music that they've provided to this show for 150 episodes, I want to congratulate both of you guys on being here and making this thing run. Jen, you've been here, I don't know. I won't even say how many years.
Yeah, that'd be
But
rude.
that would be rude. But congratulate. I mean, you've been here for the vast majority of the time, and congratulations to you both.
And thank you, James. And thank you, Julian. You have been the backbone of this for easily the past 2, 3 years,
Oh,
at
well,
least.
thank you. It's been a ton of fun. I'm very glad we had Judge James join us, and we
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of figured out how to give ourselves a kick in the pants and get things rolling again. Um, and let's give a shout to Judge Jeff and all the others who came before us, or with us and before us, I should probably say.
All the brother Jays.
All the Judges Day. Obviously, we came along and stood on the shoulders of giants. Those Judge Jim, Job, and Jeffrey episodes still hold up really well.
Yeah.
Those first 10 or 20
Mhm.
episodes, if you're a newbie or you know a newbie in DCC and you want to just kind of go deep on clerics or go deep on funnels or luck or whatever, those first episodes are still great. And still a great window back into what it was like when people were discovering DCC, 2 years back in those first 2 years. So, um, thanks to everybody. It's been great. And, thanks especially to those watching or those listening. And be in touch with us at spellburnband@gmail.com. Obviously, we do it for DCC people across the world. Last thing, thanks to Judge Jim, our patron AI, of course, and Judge Bob, the voice. And with that, I think it's time to simply say game on.
Here's to another 150 episodes.